When you ask a narcissistic woman to take accountability for the pain she has caused, you believe you are asking for something simple. You believe you are asking for maturity, for mutual respect, for the basic structure that allows two adults to build trust. But psychologically, what you are asking for is far more destabilizing to her than you realize. Accountability requires a stable inner self, one that can tolerate imperfection without collapsing. Without collapsing, a healthy person can say, I was wrong, because their identity is not shattered by the admission. Their worth is not dependent on constant superiority. But in the narcissistic personality, the self is fragile, fragmented, and deeply defended. What appears as confidence is often a carefully constructed shield protecting profound insecurity. When you point out her hurtful behavior, she does not experience it as feedback. She experiences it as an existential threat. To admit fault would mean confronting the shadow, the disowned parts of herself she has worked tirelessly to deny. And as Carl Jung often suggested, what we refuse to confront within ourselves does not disappear. It is projected outward. So instead of integrating the truth, she projects blame onto you. Suddenly, you are too sensitive, too demanding, or the real problem. This is why she may grow cold, defensive, or even hostile when you calmly request accountability. Your request strips away the illusion of perfection. It challenges the image she needs to maintain control and psychological dominance. In her internal world, to be wrong is to be diminished, and to be diminished is intolerable. Understand this clearly. Your desire for accountability is not cruelty. Your desire for accountability is not cruelty. It is the foundation of authentic intimacy. But to someone who survives on image rather than integration, authenticity feels like attack. And here is the reflection you must sit with. If a simple request for honesty turns into hatred, you are not confronting strength. You are confronting fragility, disguised as power. Now, let us move deeper into something even more subtle. You say you want consistency. You want her words and actions to align. You want today's affection to resemble tomorrow's. You want stability, not intensity followed by withdrawal, not praise followed by silent punishment. You want something predictable enough to feel safe. But consistency is the death of control for a narcissistic personality. To understand this, we must recognize that unpredictability is not accidental. It is strategic, even if unconsciously so. When affection is inconsistent, the nervous system becomes alert. You begin to seek approval more intensely. You analyze tone, facial expressions, pauses. You become hyper-aware. In psychological terms, this creates intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive behavioral pattern known to human bonding. A narcissistic woman often maintains connection, not through depth, but through emotional fluctuation. Warmth draws you in. Distance destabilizes you. The cycle keeps you focused on regaining equilibrium rather than questioning the structure of the relationship itself. Consistency, however, eliminates this dynamic. If love is steady, there is no need to chase it. If behavior is predictable, there is no mystery to decode. If emotional responses are balanced, there is no leverage to exploit. Stability equalizes power, and equality, to someone who relies on dominance for internal security, feels like loss. On a deeper level, unpredictability also protects her from vulnerability. If she remains inconsistent, she never fully invests. If she never fully invests, she never fully risks being exposed or abandoned. Chaos becomes a defense against intimacy. So when you ask for consistency, you are not merely asking for better behavior. You are asking her to relinquish control and to step into mutual responsibility. You are asking for a relationship that operates on trust rather than tension. And that request can provoke resentment because it dismantles the very mechanism that keeps her in power. Remember this. Where there is constant confusion, there is often calculated control. Choose stability, even if it costs you the illusion. And then we arrive at something even more profound: your desire for genuine empathy. You do not simply want her attention. You want to be understood. You want your pain to be felt, not analyzed, not dismissed, not theatrically mirrored, but truly absorbed by another human being. You want emotional resonance, but empathy requires depth. It requires the capacity to step outside one's own ego and encounter another person as equally real. For many narcissistic personalities, this is extraordinarily difficult. You must understand, narcissism is not merely selfishness. It is a defense structure. Beneath the grandiosity often lies an undeveloped emotional core, a self that never learned to process vulnerability safely. Instead of integration, there is performance. Instead of mutual exchange, there is impression management. She may appear compassionate when it enhances her image. She may say the right words when others are watching. But sustained, selfless emotional presence demands something far more threatening: surrender of centrality. To empathize deeply is to momentarily decenter oneself. It is to allow another person's reality to matter as much as one's own. For someone who depends on being the focal point to maintain internal stability, this can feel like erasure. So when you bring your wounds forward and ask to be understood, she may grow impatient, detached, or subtly competitive. Your pain becomes inconvenient because it shifts attention away from her narrative. Or she may mimic empathy convincingly, yet you sense something hollow beneath it, as though the words are correct, but the emotional current is missing. This is the tragedy. Without empathy, there can be no authentic intimacy. There can only be transaction. If you continually beg someone to feel what they are unwilling or unable to access within themselves, you will exhaust your own emotional reserves. And here is the truth you must confront. Love without empathy is not love. It is performance. Stop seeking depth from those committed to staying on the surface. Now consider what happens when you begin to desire something truly healthy: an equal partnership. Not dominance, not submission, not a silent hierarchy disguised as romance. You want mutual respect. You want two adults standing eye to eye, neither above nor beneath the other. But equality is profoundly unsettling to a narcissistic personality. To a narcissistic personality, at the core of narcissism is not strength, but an unstable sense of self. Superiority becomes the stabilizing force. If she feels admired, pursued, or slightly elevated above you, her internal world feels secure. The moment that balance shifts, the moment you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, stop shrinking yourself, something changes. Your growth feels like her loss. Equality removes the illusion of special status. It demands reciprocity. It requires her to consider your needs as equally valid, your boundaries as equally important, your voice as equally authoritative. And psychologically, this feels like dethronement. You may notice subtle resistance when you begin asserting yourself. She may accuse you of changing. She may imply you are becoming distant, cold, or difficult. What is truly happening, however, is a recalibration of power. You are stepping out of the subordinate emotional role, and she senses it immediately. In Jungian terms, the narcissistic structure clings to a persona of superiority to avoid confronting inner inadequacy. If you stand tall beside her, rather than beneath her. You force her to face the possibility that she is not inherently above you. That confrontation can trigger defensiveness, contempt, even bitterness. Healthy love is built on mutual recognition, two sovereign individuals choosing each other freely. But if someone requires you to be smaller in order to feel secure, then what you are participating in is not partnership. It is a psychological arrangement built on imbalance. And here is the question you must ask yourself. If your strength threatens the relationship, was it ever love? Or was it dependency disguised as devotion? Stand equal, even if it unsettles those who relied on your submission. Now let us examine your desire for honest communication. You want clarity. You want to speak directly about what is happening, without walking through a maze of half-truths, subtle distortions, or emotional traps. You want conversations where words mean what they say, where conflict leads to understanding rather than confusion. But manipulation cannot survive in the presence of clarity. For a narcissistic personality, indirect communication is not always a conscious scheme. It is often a learned survival strategy. If one cannot tolerate vulnerability, one learns to maneuver instead of reveal. Instead of saying, "I feel insecure," she may provoke jealousy. Instead of admitting fear of abandonment, she may withdraw first. Instead of expressing disappointment openly, she may punish subtly. The message is conveyed, but never owned. It demands that one acknowledge their internal state and present it without distortion. This is deeply threatening to someone who has built identity around control. When you ask for transparency, when you say, "Let's speak plainly, let's stop the games," you are asking her to dismantle the psychological tactics that maintain her advantage. You may notice resistance in the form of deflection. Conversations become circular. Your words are reinterpreted. The focus shifts. Suddenly, you are defending yourself rather than addressing the original issue. This is not accidental chaos. It is a reassertion of dominance through confusion. When reality is blurred, power consolidates in the one who defines it. Honest dialogue, however, redistributes power. It creates shared understanding. It eliminates the fog. And here lies the deeper truth. A relationship that cannot withstand straightforward conversation cannot sustain genuine intimacy. If clarity provokes hostility, then secrecy was serving a purpose. So ask yourself, are you willing to tolerate confusion in exchange for attachment? Or will you insist on truth even if it costs you the illusion of harmony? Choose clarity. It may disrupt the dynamic, but it will restore your sanity. And finally, we arrive at what may be the most uncomfortable realization of all. You want emotional security. You want to feel calm in love. You want to stop walking on psychological tightropes. Stop measuring your tone. Stop bracing yourself for the next withdrawal or eruption. You want steadiness, but emotional security deprives a narcissistic dynamic of its primary fuel, reaction. In many narcissistic relationships, emotional intensity becomes the currency of connection. Your anxiety, your attempts to fix things, your pleas for reassurance, these are not merely responses. They become validation. They confirm influence. They demonstrate that she occupies your emotional center. When you react strongly, you prove investment. When you chase after distance, you reinforce her importance. Even your anger can function as supply, because it signals that she has the power to disrupt your internal world. Now consider what happens when you no longer react in the same way, when you remain composed, when you refuse to argue in circles, when you decline to beg for clarity, when you detach from the emotional roller coaster and choose steadiness instead. Something shifts immediately. Without your emotional volatility, the dynamic loses its intensity. The push-pull weakens, the drama flattens, and in that flattening, control diminishes. This is often when resentment surfaces most clearly, not because you have harmed her, but because you have stopped feeding the pattern. Psychologically, this is profound. When you regulate yourself, you reclaim authorship over your emotional state. You cease outsourcing your stability to someone else's unpredictability. In Jungian language, you begin integrating your own shadow. He part that once tolerated chaos out of fear of loss. Emotional security is not just a desire, it is a declaration of independence. And here is the final truth you must confront. If your calm triggers hostility, it was never your love that sustained the bond. It was your reactivity. Withdraw the fuel, and the fire reveals its true nature. Choose peace, even if it exposes the emptiness of what once felt intense.